here is a serious issue, you say. Again, pressing you personally, do you believe you made a mistake when, in terms of publicizing this serious issue, you made a great play last year for demanding that actions be taken to reduce the carbon emissions of this world of ours to a point where the overall CO2 levels in the atmosphere would be 350 parts per million? You went around the world chanting 350, 350. It is now, is it not, clear that is totally unrealistic? And are you prepared to drop that particular demand?
No, I'm not prepared to drop that demand. We can't collectively opt out for suicide. We can't do that. If we opt out 350 parts per million, if we give up on 1.5 degrees, we won't be around.
You talked not so very long ago, soon after taking power, of coming up with a plan to relocate the entire population of the Maldives, if necessary. You looked at possible land purchase in Australia, in India, maybe even Sri Lanka. Where does that stand now?
Well, adaptation and evacuation, of course, is the bottom line. Evacuation, dry land is the bottom line. And we have to be all braced. We have to save for a rainy day. We have to understand that this situation can arise, and therefore we have to be ready for that. I do not disagree with that. But that doesn't mean that we have to relent on 350. We will not relent on 350.
No, well, I hear that message loud and clear, but I'm rather more concerned at the moment about the fact that your plan to develop a sovereign wealth fund to actually fund the purchase of an emergency escape route seems to have completely collapsed.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. We are working on the plan, and the plan is ongoing, but that
How much money is in this emergency wealth fund?
Well, our budget has a line that goes into the emergency wealth fund every year.
Well, I can't imagine there's much going in now, Mr. President. You've got a budget deficit that was running at 25%.
Oh, well, we are the only country who have been able to take it up to 16% from 33% of budget deficit in 2009.
Well, maybe, but that's still a huge deficit. The fact is, have you or have you not got the money to buy any land? Have you started buying land?
No, we haven't started buying land. We don't have the money to buy land yet, but what we are suggesting is that we have to save for a rainy day. Where the land is, how we go about buying land, I think we still have a fair amount of time to work on these plans and projects. But right now, we should be focused on mitigation. We really should be focused on mitigation and not necessarily just simply on adaptation. Now, buying land, moving away, bracing ourselves is all adaptation. Yes, we are focused on adaptation, but we should be focused on mitigation for the future.
It just seems to me extraordinarily difficult in your position. You have to compartmentalize. You have this vast existential threat hanging over your country, and at the same time you have to ensure good governance, a quality service from the government for the people on a daily basis. And I just wonder whether it's proving very difficult for you.
It's a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge. Even this year, more than 40% of our infrastructure development money in the budget goes for adaptation. So we have very little money for hospitals, very little money for schools, very little money for sewerage systems and so on. Yes, it is a huge challenge, but this is the world that we have inherited.
Is that one of the reasons why, when the IMF, who are trying to help your country with loans of 90 and almost $100 million, is that why when they look at what you are doing in government at the moment, they seem to be really rather unhappy with it? They're talking about, you know, major fundamental imbalances, weak fiscal position, a central government that's seemingly intent on increasing hiring and wages at a time when you can ill afford it.
Well, when we came into, we inherited 30 years of dictatorship. When we came in, we had so much civil service. We had a huge government. In the absence of political parties, the only thing that dictators are able to do is build up a huge civil service. Now, the civil service was supposedly the power base of the previous regime. And therefore, we were burdened with that. Now, it has taken us 2 years. We've come from 33% deficit to 16% this year. So we've been able to halve it in 1 year. No other country has been able to do it. IMF will recognize that, and they do.
You say they will, but the words I'm quoting come from their most recent mission report, and you know as well as I do that they're actually at the moment withholding some funds.
You know as well as I do that there are other words in the report as well.
Yeah, of course there are, but the ultimate proof of their dissatisfaction is that they haven't yet released the next tranche of their loan to you, have
Well,
they?
very true, they haven't. They want the civil service to be reduced introduced instantly, which is going to be very difficult, and we will snap if we do that. We have to be politically mindful of what would happen after that. So we will deal with the situation in a manner which is sustainable.
Is your desperation for cash in this very difficult economic climate the reason why, according to the leaks from WikiLeaks concerning various cables from US diplomatic missions around the world, you in the Maldives were seeking a deal with the United States whereby you would take a certain number of Guantanamo Bay prisoners from the United States authorities, but only in return for US assistance, trying to persuade the IMF to give you more money?
I don't think there's any basis, there's any substance for this at all. When we wanted to take the Guantanamo Bay prisoners, that was before we came to government. This was a human rights issue. We wanted to assist anyone that we can in human rights. We came to government on a human rights platform, and we thought, and we still believe, that it is important that we are able to assist anyone that we can along these lines.
But did you see an opportunity then to make some money out of taking?
We didn't talk about it at all. We didn't mention it at all, and I don't think this is
why were the US diplomats of the belief that you were seeking to tie?
I think you should ask the US diplomats this question. Never ever once did we mention anything that would connect the Guantanamo Bay prisoners with anything else. For us, it's a human rights issue, and we will continue to deal with it.
Now, human rights is a very important part of your life story. You were an Amnesty International prisoner of conscience before you eventually were elected into the presidential office. You spent years in prison, 18 months in solitary confinement. It seems strange in a way, maybe disappointing to some people around the world, that you are now a president at loggerheads with your own parliament. You're putting the army on the streets from time to time to quell public disturbances. It seems you've moved a long way from where you came from.
No, if you look at Reporters Without Borders, we are just 3 or 4 steps behind France in freedom of expression. We were somewhere around 150 before. If you look at the report from Amnesty International, you would also see that we've improved so much on human rights, on freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, on peaceful political activity, and so on. Yes, of course, there are issues in our country. We are very young in democracy, and we are settling down, and we are consolidating democracy, and in the process, we are going to face challenges. And I am sure that we will be able to deal with that, and we will be the only democratic Islamic country in the world. We presently are the only multi-party 100% Muslim country in the world, and it's not an easy thing to do.
But it must hurt you in a way, given your background and your commitment, and I hear that commitment in your voice, to human rights, when a former Attorney General in your own country, Hassan Saeed, writes, Nasheed is a former prisoner of conscience, and yet he's threatened his own parliament. He's arrested MPs under laws which he himself opposed when he went through his own struggle.
No, we have not.
Two MPs are currently facing charges, aren't they?
Well, this Prosecutor General is an independent institution, and I'm glad that the Prosecutor General has dropped the charges of these 2 MPs. I'm extremely glad that he has dropped these charges. He is an independent body. It's an appointed by the Parliament, and the government has no say on it, on who they charge and who they don't charge.
But talking of your democratically elected Parliament, they've refused to endorse at least half of your cabinet.
Well, we don't have a rubber stamp Parliament as they used to before, and of course they are all very new to the newfound democracy and the newfound freedoms.
Yes, but they have a mandate just as you do, and they don't like your cabinet picks, and they want you to choose new ones, but you're refusing to choose new ones, and you're basically forcing them to accept the old ones.
Basically, we have the last dictatorship as the opposition. We do not want to destroy the opposition through legal action. If we do that, we will not have an opposition. I believe that it would be best and it would be possible for us to bring about justice through the democratic process, not necessarily through charging these people. Now, if we go along and charge the whole of the opposition. We won't have an opposition in the parliament. We don't like that situation. And I think the parliament is very vibrant. And I think, of course, they will need time to settle down. And they are settling down.
Interesting that you say you don't want to charge unnecessarily. It would foment new political tensions. But the one very striking individual you've chosen not to pursue in any sort of legal fashion is the former president, your predecessor, President Gayoom. I mean, your own National Audit Office has itemised spending that, to use their words, was out of control. And given what we've discussed about your budget deficit, wouldn't it be worth challenging in the court some of his expenditures? 55 cars, a $17 million yacht, $70,000 trips for his wife to Dubai. Why are you not pursuing the former president?
Again, if we go for a witch hunt,
well, I'm not suggesting a witch hunt. I'm just talking about justice,
yes,
and maybe, frankly, getting back some of the tens or maybe hundreds of millions of dollars that are alleged to have gone in this direction.
This is one of the most serious issues for us, how we deal with the former president. In the past, our culture has been dealing with former rulers very, very ruthlessly. And therefore, we've always been in this circle of not having to be able to pull out of it. And I think the manner in which we deal with our former president, President Gayoom, would show us a path on how we may be able to move forward as a democratic society. I believe that democracy would dispense justice better than perhaps a courtroom drama.
Before we end, Mr. President, I just want to, in a sense, bring us back to the beginning. We talked a lot about the Maldives and the threat it faces from climate change. You have made a real big noise on the international stage, not least with your underwater cabinet meetings, also the life story, which is very remarkable. Why, in the end, though, should the world really care about the future of
There's not going to be a world. It's not. We are all Maldivians. It will happen to the Maldives today. What happens to the Maldives today will happen to England tomorrow. There's not going to be a planet. There's not going to be a humanity. If we have to understand this, that there are planetary boundaries. You cannot cut a deal with physics. You cannot cut a deal with Mother Nature. We have to understand that this is what is available to us. And we have to hand it over to future generations intact in the manner we found it.
President Mohamed Nasheed, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Hard Talk.
Thank you.